day, I think would give me a unique perspective on the issue. So.
I want to get back to this county thing.
Oh, yeah.
The reason why county government originally started to actually help regionalize areas to help. I mean, these roads were all called county roads.
Right.
And they're not called county roads anymore, but that's what they originally started out as.
Yeah.
And the county seat actually was the distance you could ride your horse in one day.
Yeah.
That was the way they did it in New England. But in essence, we've gone from that. But I think that part of the problem that happened was, as the county, as time went on, you had Worcester County, which is one of the bigger counties. It takes up the entire part of central Massachusetts. The northern end had different needs than the southern part, and the central part, and the eastern part, and the western part.
Yep.
I mean, so I think what you probably need to do now is go to regionalization based on needs and desires and ability to work together.
Yeah, because it's interesting, because I mean, you mentioned Worcester County, and you know, Worcester County includes the city of, you know, just to kind of, you know, put it in perspective, as you were, the city of Worcester.
Yep.
A town like Harvard, you know, a bedroom town that's basically an apple orchard, you know, area, and then you have Athol, you know, in the same county, Milford in the same county.
Right.
And so you have some really diverse pockets and areas where I think that was part of the reason why county government wasn't really working here the same way it worked elsewhere. But I think your assessment of the situation is absolutely correct. And, you know, Franklin County, 1999 or so is when most counties in the state were abolished, 98. And right around that time, the former towns and what were the towns and what was Franklin County, you know, in the western part of the state, right before Berkshire County.
Oh yeah, I know Franklin County well.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, they got together, you know, as I'm sure you know, and they formed, you know, the FCOG, the Franklin County Organization of Government.
Right, because they're basically the same type of towns, all in that general area.
Yeah, and the issue, you know, is, you know, some of these towns out there, like, you know, you have your Mount Washington, your Alfred, or, you know, your Gosnold, you know, that's essentially Cuttyhunk and the Elizabeth Islands, you know, with 68 people, 110 people. And, you know, they're trying to have a veterans agent, you know, and run a senior center.
Right.
And just have people to run for the Board of Selectmen. I mean, there was one town I read about in the spring. It was a town out in Franklin County, can't remember the name of it, but there wasn't one single person that came forward to put their name on the ballot for any position at all. And there was one guy that was quoted, he was, I think, the tax collector who was elected. And he said, yeah, I want to do it again. He said, but it's easier for me to get 7 or 8 write-in votes than it is for me to drive to 7 or 8 homes, you know, up these county roads trying to, or country roads.
To go out and get the signatures.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So.
But yeah, I think that's a big factor out there, because those are very small communities.
Yeah.
But they've, over the years, have gone to regionalization on their schools.
Right. A lot of towns have.
Go ahead, Carl. You're on.
Hi, Harry. It's Karen.
Hi.
Good evening, Mr. Dodd.
Hi, Karen.
On your bid here to run for state representative, have you looked at the health care costs in Massachusetts and how you could help us with what is coming our way with this national health care?
I have had a chance to look at it. I mean, I think, you know, in a sense, in 2004, when Massachusetts, you know, some would say became pioneers, you know, we were one of the first in the country to kind of go that route. You know, we've now had 6 years to kind of analyze and look at it, and you know, one of the things that I try to look at is in the case of small businesses, and the burden, you know, that some healthcare costs have put onto small businesses. You know, my father and my grandfather both ran small businesses in Westboro, and you know, I think it's really important. If I was elected, what I would really try to do is focus a lot of the healthcare on looking at the small business costs and how healthcare eats up, you know, a lot of the costs of small business. One of the proposals that I have was working, you know, I would like to work with the Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Route 9 the Route 9 Corridor Chamber of Commerce to create a district-wide task force that would look at small, you know, made up of small business people that would look at some of the issues facing them, specifically the healthcare issue. You know, the national, as a state rep, it wouldn't necessarily handle the national issue, but you're right to mention, though, that it's clearly going to have repercussions and an effect. I think it was a very large, you know, not just physically, but in terms of change. It was a very large document, and I'm not sure I guess I would have been hesitant, honestly, if I was a congressman, which, you know, I'm not running for that, so I guess I don't have to say it, but, you know, I'd be hesitant to support it just because I thought a lot of it was, you know, was really too much too soon. And I think a lot of these ideas, I think, need to be really fleshed out more, you know, which is why I would like, you know, if elected, to try to work with people in the district to see what the healthcare issues are. You know, because when people mention healthcare, there's a lot of very different specific issues. You know, some are involving public employees and benefits, others are involving, obviously, private employees. You know, some involve, you know, things like co-pays, others involve, you know, things like long-term disability and long-term care. So really what I would like to do is if I was elected, to really spend a lot of time, you know, speaking to different people in the 4 towns in the district to really gauge their positions, and then to kind of look at what was going on in the state and nationally, and how we could best look at it as a Commonwealth.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
have one more question.
Sure.
Who would you pool for this task force?
Oh, well, as I mentioned, what I would like to do was, my first step would be to speak to the 2 different, I believe there are 2 chambers, chambers of commerce that cover the district, and so I would essentially reach out to them, and I would, you know, try to be big on communication as a selectman. I would try to reach out to the local press and the local media, and basically just reach out to whoever was interested.
I thank you.
Thank you.
Very good answer. Thanks.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Good night. Yeah, on the health care, what I've been able to gather, the bill is,
Yeah, I mean, physically it's large.
I
but
tried to read it online.
Yeah.
It's impossible. It's just so lengthy.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure your computer didn't crash trying to open it.
Right. But one of the things that I believe was in there, and I'm not absolutely positive, but if states already have something like Mass has, they would not have to comply with the federal.
I believe something like that might be the case, because I mean, I know a lot of what we already have, you know, which went into place in 2004, I think a lot of it is similar to
What I found is a problem with the state's program. You're required to have health care. If you don't, then you're going to have to pay on your taxes. They withhold your refund.
Right.
But the problem I've heard is that unless you're really destitute, you don't qualify for Mass Health. So then you're going to go out and buy your own, and whatever you buy, it's extremely expensive.
It is, and one of the things I know when it was first created in '04, I guess I was in that category now. I'm not really anymore, but one of the categories I had heard that the legislation was trying to help were people, younger people, who, you know, thought they were as healthy as a horse, maybe working jobs, you know, that were paid in cash. You know, like a bartender or a waiter,
right.
Or different kinds of, you know, contractual jobs, who didn't have health insurance from their employer, were making good enough money, but didn't feel like they should spend, you know, a couple $1,000s or several $1,000s a year on healthcare costs,
right.
When they were healthy. But now a lot of those, you know, friends of mine and people I know in that category have said, look, like I have one friend who said, you know, I just take the penalty. Yeah. Because the penalty is cheaper than the insurance.
Right, so the concept that everybody was going to jump on board, and the insurance companies would love it because they'd be getting those premiums from people that didn't use their services, which way they make. That's why life insurance companies. That's why life insurance is fairly cheap.
Yeah, it actually
because
is.
you get enough young people to buy it, and it takes care of the ones they got to pay off on.
Yeah.
But it's not happening in the healthcare industry, like you say. It's so expensive, and it's cheaper to pay the penalty.
Right. It is, and I mean, I think, you know, as I mentioned with small business, I mean, from what I've heard from small business owners, I mean, that's the #1 issue that they face.
But the problem that I've heard, in as of late, because of the economy, is people who got laid off, and in some cases both the husband and wife, whereas you could probably pick it up from one or the other, but they both got laid off. They're in their late 50s or early 60s. Until you're 65, you don't get any Medicare. So you're in that, what you might call an empty zone where you can't get anything.
Yeah.
So now you got to go out and buy it. Now, you're in your 50s or early 60s. You buy health insurance, ain't going to be cheap.
Yeah.
Because they figure you're going to be using it. So it makes it pretty prohibitive. If you're relying on an unemployment check to be able to pay your mortgage and your other bills and put food on the table, even you left to go buy that darn stuff.
Oh yeah. And I think
and I don't think the state made provisions for that, and I don't think Mass Health could do it anyway, because I think Mass Health is going broke as it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's having some real financial problems.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think, you know, for better or for worse, you know, what happened here, I think, was an experiment.
Yep.
And I think there are parts of it that have probably worked and parts of it that need to be revisited. You know, but and the other thing, you know, about health insurance is there are obviously a lot of people out there in other states or even in Massachusetts just take the penalty who don't have health insurance. And, you know, it's a hard thing, but if you look at it from the perspective of a lot of these, the other problem, I think, with health insurance is preventative care.
Right.
Because a lot of the people, you know, that get rushed to the ER might not have insurance, and because they didn't have insurance and they couldn't afford it, they just kept waiting until the situation got so bad that they had to go to the ER, in which case, you know, it's being paid for, but, you know, that's a real issue too, I think, so.
But there again, you have to change minds and change attitudes, and I don't think that's going to be an easy thing to do either. I mean,
I don't think so.
We have an obesity problem in this
Right.
country. We have an overweight problem. You know, and you're going to do that on your own.
Yeah, and I don't think, like, I mean, like Mississippi, I think it was trying to start some initiative of, you know, having to weigh kids. You know, Los Angeles was trying to...
People start resenting that,
yeah,
too.
well, and look, and I mean, Los Angeles, you know, was trying to do something about banning fast food in certain neighborhoods for the whole city, and...
But it's education.
I think
you got to convince people.
In a free society, you know, we can't, I don't think we should dictate, let's say, to McDonald's that they can't sell a supersized meal, but I do think that it's imperative upon people to educate people about...
Not to buy it.
Not to buy it, or...
If you don't buy it,
yeah.
they won't sell it.
Well, that's true, too, but, yeah.
And that's, you know, we've had, I was going to say 50 years now, about 50 years of anti-smoking since the original Surgeon General's report, which is in the 60s. And now it's really, it's not fashionable, and less people smoke. It's the lowest amount of smokers ever. You can't smoke anywhere, all these things, but it took over, of course, of years. So now they're focusing on overeating and eating the wrong stuff and everything else, but it's not going to happen overnight.
No, it's like as you were saying, it's really a cultural change.
Yeah,
and
but you can't legislate.
And you can't legislate it. I mean, you can't, you know, you can't, like as I was saying, I mean, you can't just ban hamburgers, you know, for example, or ban fast food. I mean, I think it needs to be a cultural shift, which unfortunately does take generations, you know, for that to happen, or at least a generation.
But in the meantime, I don't know if we can afford to mandate health insurance to everyone, because if you can't get it at work, it's awful expensive to buy personally.
And then the other, on the flip side, you know, because there are so many people in the state who work for a municipality or state government, and so that health insurance cost is then passed on, you know, to the local taxpayers. And, you know, I certainly, obviously, you know, feel that it's important, you know, that public employees be provided those benefits, but...
That's a good point. Now, one of the biggest costs that that the cities and towns have to incur is a constant increase in their health insurance costs. And in many cases, they've tried to get that under control by asking their employees to take a bigger copay, to pay a bigger percentage of the premium, and and it's being fought.
Yeah.
It's being fought by the unions. It's being fought by, well, the individuals have no choice. If you're not in the union within a community, the town manager says this is what it's going to be, and that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, there aren't too many people in those categories.
But how do you handle that? I mean, how, you know...
It's true.
Yep. Go ahead, Carl, you're on. Oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute, I hit the wrong... Go ahead, you're on. I hit the wrong button.
Hi, are you on with Tim Dodd right now?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I think it's very exciting that that an educator is running for election, coming from someone who works in the school system and a parent of someone in the school system. I think it's great that that an educator is running for state representative, and I just wanted to say good luck.
Okay, you have no question.
No.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it, and you know, if it's okay with you, Harry, I think it's a good time to bring up a point too. Is that?
Oh, is that caller?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I like to leave the line open.
You know,
if someone
I
wants to
agree.
call the
I
question.
really agree with the with the concept of a citizen legislator. You know, that was really pioneered, obviously, by George Washington and other founding fathers. And you know, to me, it's important, you know, that we have people from different calls in life, you know, from different walks in life, who are willing to step up. And
here again, at the time, you served maybe 1, 2 terms at the most, and then you went home, back home.
yeah, but